Hey everyone, Lonnie here. This week's video is going to be just a little different. I'm going to address the issue of space. Something we all seem to lack is somewhere to put something. Now I'm going to go over the steps I use in order to create more space, and hopefully it'll help somebody out there. So let's get started. Now the space I'm aiming for is underneath my workbench. I originally had intentions of putting my smaller sections of wood under here. Ended up scroll saw, small welder, and just a few clamps. So I've got to find somewhere to go with this stuff so I can get back to my original idea. Now the only place I've seen that I can improve on my space is underneath my bandsaw or my radial arm saw. These stands, you can buy them or sometimes they come with your equipment. In this case, when I purchased this, it came with it. They're handy and they don't take up much space, but they also suck a lot of space at the same time. There's not a real good room. I put a shelf here, but a lot of times you get sawdust on stuff and there's floor space that's wasted. Now I take quite a few things into account when I start one of these projects, any modifications I want. Now this is a good comfortable height, but if I'm working on the radial arm saw, boards have a tendency to button up against it and I've got to pull it out and move things. So if I bring this top down to the same level as this and go back with it just a little bit, I shouldn't have to pull the radial arm saw out. Now most of my projects on the bandsaw are fairly small, so I feel comfortable that by moving it back and not putting it on casters, that it should be all right. What I'll start with is the height. Now this is 102 centimeters tall here, or 40¼ inches approximately. So I'll take the bandsaw off the stand, measure its height top to bottom, and that'll tell me how high I want to make the cabinet system. Now, I've got the bandsaw off of its stand, so I know these mounting plates down here are going to fit level on my shelf. Now my goal is 102 centimeters to here, and I'm at, from the bottom to the top of this, approximately 40, leaves me 62 centimeters that I can make my new cabinet out of. I can make my height of my new cabinet too. What I'll be using today is 3/4 inch MDF. I have quite a few sections this size. They're approximately 29½ by 19¼ wide, which equals out to about 75 centimeters long and 49 inches wide. 3/4 inch is approximately 2 centimeters, so I've got an overall height of 62 centimeters, so that's going to knock me down to 60 centimeters. So I need to cut off 15 centimeters. So I'm going to take 2 of these for the ends, cut them down to 15 centimeters, and move on to the next step. Once you get your pieces cut to the height, it's important to put legs on here. Just notch out a little section in the bottom. And you might think, well, it's going to make it stronger by being a nice solid surface across there, which would be true. But the problem is floors tend not to be level. Even though a concrete or stone floor might look level, they can be off by just a few millimeters or a 1/16 of an inch and could cause everything to wobble. This will allow you to shim up the legs if necessary. Now what I'm going to do is marker point. I want these legs to be about 6 centimeters wide. So I'll make a mark there. mark on the corresponding side. Now they don't have to be long. I'm just going to use an old paint can. I'll mark it about halfway. And line up with that mark. Line up with that mark. Just take a straight edge and go from the peak to the peak. And I'll do the same thing on the next one. Then I'll use a jigsaw to cut these out, being as I've got my bandsaw out of operation. Now once you've got your legs cut, you can router this off if you want to make it look pretty. I'm not worried about it. Now my tallest router is approximately 37 centimeters from bottom to its highest point. Put a 2 centimeter shelf on here. And the top shelf where the bandsaw will be is simply going to rest on top of this. So measuring from the bottom, I've got about 57 centimeters. So I'm going to put a support brace across here and let the shelf sit on it and glue and screw it. Now I would go ahead and just cut a dado, but I'm limited on the length of material I have, and I want to make every inch count. So I'll just put a brace on here and we'll start putting it together. Now, out of one of the pieces I trimmed off an end. I cut 2 support pieces approximately 3 centimeters thick or wide. I'm going to just use a speed square, set my distance I want. Then all I'll do is line these up, glue them and screw them. And when you get done, you have your bracket mounted firmly to the bottom. I just put 3 1-inch screws in there. Remember with MDF it's important to pre-drill the holes. I went ahead and countersink. That way my 1-inch screws would go in a little further but not quite to the other side. Now when I put the top shelf on, it'll lay on the top, and I want it to come straight up to the edge. So that means I need to cut about 4 centimeters off the bottom. Remember these 3/4 of inches, approximately 2 centimeters. And that should sit firmly in here. And then we'll add some braces. Alright, now because I had 2 centimeters on each side, I had to take off, making sure that I counted for the kerf 4 centimeters. So this will be the bottom shelf. My top shelf, I'm just going to take where I trimmed off, line it up flush. And I'm going to put about 4 screws drilled and countersink, and then I'm going to glue and screw the top on and then set the bottom shelf on very carefully. Now I know I've got enough room for my scroll saws to fit. I could add another shelf in here, but really it's so deep I would probably lose stuff, so I'm going to skip that. Now I do have to put a brace going across because it has no side-to-side protection. And I'll put a small brace across the bottom, but I'll stay probably about 2 centimeters up from the bottom. That way I don't have to worry about it becoming uneven on the floor. Now I've got my brace on the bottom, on the top, on both sides. This will keep it from going back and forth nearly as much. It's glued and screwed. Once the glue dries totally, it'll basically be one solid piece. So now I'll clean out the area it's going to go to, set her in there, and I'll start mounting the bandsaw back to the top of it. Well, that's that. It's a nice level height where I won't be bumping up against this, and I keep my blade far enough back from the fence on the radial arm saw where I don't risk hitting it either. We've now got storage for my scroll saws, which starts to free up the bottom of my main workbench. Now the point behind moving stuff slowly is I get this organized here. It frees up the workbench. In turn, I can move my wood, small end pieces under there. I keep my long stuff overhead, which will free up a corner in the shop. It's kind of a chain reaction. You've just got to find out where you can make space out of wasted space. And this will give me a little bit more room side to side. I'll probably do something with this open spot right here. That's it. Thanks for taking time to watch. I appreciate any and all comments, good, bad, indifferent. Please like and subscribe. Thank you.